14th, 2022, special meeting of the Board of Education. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to
to
the
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everybody for being able to make this this kind of last minute meeting. The Board of Ed, obviously when we need to have discussions, we hold our meetings under open meeting laws have to be held in public. So we're doing it in this forum to be able to get us together, just to have some discussion and clarify questions surrounding some of the latest COVID protocols and guidance.
Hey, Heidi, and if it's all right, I'll just go ahead and kind of take it from there to start with.
Yep.
As you mentioned, we have had rapid fire of updates this week. So we did get a update from the state earlier in the week. I think it was on Tuesday. Then we had an update coming from the county shortly after that. And actually overnight, we also received another update from the state last night about 11 o'clock. So we're processing through that part. What I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here very quickly with you. And one of the things I did want to point out, we didn't talk about it last Tuesday when we met. There is an element inside of here that the district has been kind of, I'll say, adding to our mitigation strategies. Remember last week we talked about the added value of our mitigation strategies. So we'll get to that one part we added. But here is a chart or a table from the New York State Department of Health that was released last night. We have kind of our own flow chart there, but we might as well just stay with the states. So we're just going to stay with the state one and go from there. So in this regard, I'd like to go ahead and start with, an example of things. And obviously, Matt, our COVID coordinator, and all this stuff is here. But I wanted to start by showing a highlight of one of the differences that we've got currently going on right now in the district. So this is, again, is people. Now you see that the state is really starting to narrow this down with like people not, and there's caveats for schools and things, but instead of having very separate documents for people, they try to bring that into one, which they've done here. So any person who has known exposure to COVID-19 and they don't have symptoms. So that's kind of the starting spot. You see where the quarantine duration here is, where they're looking at for us. I'll just jump to the school age area where ages 5 to 11, if you're fully vaccinated, there's no need for quarantine there. So that's kind of what they're talking about in that regard. And then here, not yet fully vaccinated. Yes, you have a 5-day piece. Older children, 12 and older, fully vaccinated, boosted, no. Fully vaccinated, not yet eligible for a booster. Different there, no. If you're fully vaccinated, eligible for booster, but not yet boosted, you've got the 5-day piece here. They agree to not yet fully vaccinated, you've got your 5 days. Then again, if you've tested positive COVID, this has been going on for a while, in the last 3 months, regardless of vaccination status, then there's no quarantine need there. So you can see those elements. This next line is really a little bit more specific to school and travel back and forth to school as well too. So again, I'll jump into here. So if you're looking at you're quarantining, you're fully vaccinated and don't have symptoms, then you're heading back to school. And then the idea about if you're not fully vaccinated, you've got your 5 days here. And no, you can't attend school unless you're in the test to stay program. So that is a really key piece. So that's what we've been doing, that you're there to come back, go ahead and do that work, and as long as you're in the test to stay program. One of the notes we'll walk on here is, again, that no extracurricular activities here. So we've been doing that. So one of the areas I want to talk about, again, fully vaccinated and boosted, no quarantine, and yes, you can come back to school. Yep. Fully vaccinated and not yet eligible for booster, you're coming back. Here's the delineator that the district had talked about last Tuesday, where again, you're fully vaccinated, eligible for booster, but not boosted. So you're quarantined. Yes, you're able to attend. And you see this piece here, the testing encouraged. That is a piece that the district, as we spoke last Tuesday, we have been asking since day one, we were able to do that for all employees to come back in. They test to return. So that is a piece we have done with all of our employees, be it teachers, administrators, custodian, whoever has been doing that. So that is a part we mentioned last Tuesday. If we get this update where we can now do that for children and have them come back after day 5, we would follow the same suit and do that. So that is the part that we have certainly are hearing different perspectives. To be straightforward, we have heard from families who, no, you gotta let kids back in without testing. Others saying, oh, thank goodness you're doing that. So there's been no clear piece there. When this came out last night, as we looked at here, what we would be suggesting is we would need to move that for the children where testing is encouraged, and we would go ahead and continue that part. So we would highly encourage and ask people to test with us. We will still keep our peace with all employees, no matter what kind of trade they represent, to test on the way back in. We have full and appreciative support from our employees to making sure we're testing them on the way back in. Just to let you know, yesterday was our first day coming back into the schools, and we had students coming in out of the quarantine after day 5, where approximately 80% of those children are able to go ahead in schools because they tested negative. So we were also seeing about 20% roughly of the children who came in after day 5 on our test to return piece that were testing positive. We do not have, and as you can see here, is that state is making it very clear, testing is encouraged, not mandated. So that's a key piece there that I would see a change coming out in the afternoon when we send this communication out with kind of this document and some other things. So I'm going to kind of stop there, see, Matt, if I had any missed anything there, or if, and then we'll shift to the board. Anything there, Matt?
Nope, you got it.
Got it. Great. That was good. So let me go ahead and see if any on the board just have any overall arching questions on this one. Please go ahead, Lindsay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. So if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like anyone who is fully vaccinated between the ages of 5 and 11, regardless of their status, can return back to school after 5 days. There's no testing required. But the difference is 12 and up, because you're eligible for a booster, that if you have not been boosted, then you have to test to stay. Is that correct? Is that what we're trying to say? I'm just trying to figure out how we're distinguishing here, because on we say ages 5 to 11, fully vaccinated child has been quarantined. After 5 days, they can come back or they cannot come back. Over to the left.
So they would be able to come back right away because, again, they're fully vaccinated, and this is an exposure. This is not a positive. So their exposure, those individuals need to come back. And so if I'm following, again, fully vaccinated and booster, no need for quarantine. And even here, fully vaccinated, not yet eligible for booster, no. But if you're fully vaccinated, eligible for booster, but not yet boosted, yes, they're saying you need a quarantine for 5 days, but you can come back as part of the test to stay program.
I'm seeing that
day 5,
sorry.
And after day 5, then you can come back fully without the need for testing, and it's encouraged.
There are 2 pages here, Ray. Is the second one going to be about what happens if you actually test positive?
So this is exposure. Page 2 is test positive.
Okay, so my understanding. So I would guess that it's the difference between the 5 to 11 and the ages 12 is basically they're saying if it's been the 5 or 6 months since you had your second vaccine dose, they're not considering it effective enough until you get the booster. So that's why they've added in that booster requirement and that encouraging testing and not extra.
That's my understanding. And down here at the bottom again, Heidi, you just mentioned that here. The no extracurriculars here. You'll see that here as well too, again, for our younger children. Again, in this case, again, they're not yet fully vaccinated little guys. Well, quarantine status, they can go ahead and enter the test to stay program. So they can come in, as we're doing right now in our schools, little guys coming in might not have been vaccinated, they're coming in, and we're testing them on a daily basis. They are not to, though, attend after school or extracurricular activities until that 10 days is fully done.
Ray, I have a question. Where it says fully vaccinated, boosted, are we talking about someone who received a booster yesterday or has had the 2 weeks for it to become effective?
2 weeks.
Thank you.
Got it. So if just a quick scenario, my brother or sister at home, they test positive, I'm fully vaccinated, boosted, I can go to school tomorrow
Yes. So
with no testing.
yeah, Nick, I'm glad you gave up that example because again, that's a mitigation factor the district put on top where if it happened in the home, we were seeing and we are seeing it spreads throughout the home. Right now, we're going to ask and offer and encourage and provide those tests in the schools. We will no longer be requiring that in the schools. We'll get that communication out at the end of the day. Again, as you see here, again, testing encouraged. That's just a language we'll borrow and say testing encouraged, but it's not mandated.
Okay.
One piece. Heidi.
So if we're making a chart that's specific to Somers, we would add in that encouraged piece and that piece of if the exposure's in the home. Well, because I guess we're just encouraging no matter what. Are we encouraging testing when they
Yes.
come back, or only if
Absolutely.
the exposure's in the home?
No, encouraging, no matter if it's a home or it's an outside exposure, yes, we would encourage them to do that as they would come in. Again, we see that a significant majority of our families are taking opportunity for that. That is certainly something we don't see will change with this. Some may not. That's where we're at. Say okay, but we are certainly seeing that. And as I mentioned before, our faculty, we will be mandating, and they are in full agreement that all of our faculty and employees will be coming back for a test to return as they come back. And our numbers again are approximately 80% of those come back on day one. The rest start coming back on the next day and the next day. It just sometimes takes a couple of days to get clear of that being a positive test.
Yeah. Now, with the encouraged and returning, how are we logistically doing that? Are we asking the student, or do the parents have to give a note going in that yes, we want them to be tested, or no, we don't?
More to your second piece there, Nick. Our nurses typically send an email to the homes, say, hey, look, Ray, he is tested positive. He needs to be kind of able to come, do his quarantine period. Then he can come back in after that. Would you like us to test on the way in or out? And that's basically what we're doing. Because that communication is already going, just adding that kind of detail to the end.
Okay.
Ray, from my perspective, a lot of the questions and the confusion have been around folks that actually tested positive. Is it possible, just in the interest of clarity, for us to move to the positive scenario? For instance, people that test positive but have been fully vaccinated and then might be returning back to school, testing to stay, testing positive, but are no longer actually positive or are not shedding the virus, I guess is the better term. What does that look like?
So hopefully you saw the second slide just shifted here. So again,
thank you. Yeah.
Yep, safe for everybody, regardless, unvaccinated, vaccinated, or boosted. So that's what they're talking about. There's an isolation for the general public who have a positive COVID test. As you know, we've had people who are fully boosted in our schools, our employees, who all then test positive.
Sure.
And so that happens. So what we're looking at is, for example, okay, no symptoms, but you have a positive test. So again, you're out for those 5 days. And as you work through 10 days, I mean, if we wear a mask, well, we're all wearing masks, so that shouldn't be an issue. But some folks maybe not being wear a mask. The thing here is if symptoms develop after testing positive, start that 5-day count, beginning at symptoms that the day they started. So that's your isolation period. So that's a piece where, again, as long as you're asymptomatic and you have that positive test, you are, again, coming back after that 5th day. For us as a school district, we are working with all of our employees and we will be testing all of our employees coming back. We will encourage those at home, the children, to test, be part of that program to test return, but they do not have to.
I'm sorry.
And
So
then,
I'm sorry, Ray, could you say that last bit again? I want to make sure I have that right.
so we cannot, nor will we any longer be requiring our children to test on the way back in after their 5 days, as long as, again, there's no symptoms. We will, though, be asking, and we are supportive, greatly appreciative of all of our employees to have us do the testing as they re-enter. Again, it just allows us to keep less people in our schools that we know are positive, and we're doing that. And then over here to the right, symptoms. So if you do have symptoms that you have there, again, minimum of 5 days, the note here, they said, when the fever is free for 24 hours without fever reducing medication and your symptoms have improved. So that's a piece. It said, look, you maybe started with symptoms and they kind of went away very quickly. We've seen much of that because it seems to be a much less severe piece, especially if folks are vaccinated and things, or you may be very mildly impacted if you're unvaccinated. You have to be free of that for 24 hours without any fever reducing medicine before you can come back. Same thing though, again, symptomatic, we would not be testing any of the children coming back. We would only be testing our employees.
Ray, can I ask a question that's not on here? The kids that are coming back to school after testing positive, are they able to return by bus? Or do you want the parents to bring them in? Does it not matter since we're not testing anymore?
Right, so, basically in this accord that after day 5, they can come back. And the testing is, or the ride to the school is just fine. As well as home.
And that's something that's now required by the state that we allow that, right?
That is a piece that was clear in the documentation. Yes, the students can come back and forth to school.
That just came in, okay.
Which includes transportation, just to be clear.
Transportation on our nice big yellow buses.
Thank you.
Mhm. And so can they come back to extracurricular activities after 5 days also?
So let me go back to this one here, because this area of no extracurricular in particular, we are seeking guidance update from the Westchester Department of Health, because what that would mean, Heidi, is no, they could not. They're here for school, proper hours only. They're not here for any extracurricular activities. Again, that is somebody who's vaccinated but did not boost yet. If you're fully vaccinated and boosted, you're good to go. There's nothing there. You're straight away. Back in school, participating in extracurricular activities. They're saying now, so if you're not boosted, then you can now participate in extracurricular activities until the end of that 10 days.
Okay.
Realistically, can I just ask realistically, Ray, how is that actually enforced?
So right now, the thing that we would see is it's one of the pieces that out of our most of our active school activities now are band, music, and we got clubs and we've got our athletics going. The piece inside of there is we are waiting on clarification. We are not intended to be doing contact tracing anymore. That was part of the communication last night as well. We just have some detailed questions because some of the language is a little ambiguous. And so we don't see that being nearly as much, Lindsay, as before, because we're just not actively going out there and doing contact tracing. That's the piece. But there may be a time if I'm out there on the wrestling mat and, I end up being positive and the coach knows, well, geez, he was sparring with Steve all day yesterday. That. I know that. I don't have to go find it. I know that. So that's a situation where it's our understanding that that's a part we need to let the families know and act accordingly. But again, we are waiting for the Westchester Department to have the hold on that one. You may recall back last week or early this week on Tuesday, the same piece came out. The Department of Health told us it was actually item 2B on the list. It said, wait, we're still waiting on further clarification about after school activities.
Ray,
So
do you have a slide show what is the symptoms mean or definition of symptoms?
It's right down here. Here's the symptoms right here. So people just hit on that power link there or the hyperlink there, and it'll take them directly to the symptoms from the state as they've identified them.
So you don't have a slide showing, it's just temperature, cough, runny nose, what else, or some?
If you, one moment, if I'll switch that slide, but that is the hyperlink to where it is showing where the information is. And so it'll take you right to this slide that says symptoms of COVID-19. So that is the symptoms that they're talking about.
Okay, fevers, cough. I see.
Yep. And again, that is all inside of the document that we're reviewing before. It's just a hyperlink over here in a few places to the right here and the top here, symptoms.
Good, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it seems like the enforcement of that, that I guess I see why you have to clarify that piece with the extracurriculars, because you're only going to know that somebody was exposed in most cases if they actually tell you.
Correct.
And then
Yeah.
but when the school district is aware that a student has been exposed, if they know because they know that there was a sibling or they know that, it was an obvious direct exposure in school, how does that process then of notifying within the school happen? Like, how would the coaches or the club leaders know, or is it just on the honor system that the student doesn't attend?
So right now it would be kind of continuing what we're currently doing. And so, we do, when we go out and we do active contact tracing and we say, oh, there's a student next to another student we know is positive. Now we've got that name and information, then we report that to the county and we share that with the families. It would be the same case here. And I think your point is well taken. It's going to be just a lot less number of that because we're not actively out there contact tracing and trying to find out. If we're presented with it, then we just continue the same path we've been doing. Share that with the family, share that with the county.
Okay. But so if a student is supposed to be not going to extracurriculars and then they show up for their sports team, would the coach know that they're not supposed to be there or no?
Yes. So the coaches or, and typically even teachers right now, they're fully aware of here's the students in the class that basically we kind of give a student access, to a pass that, they've kind of done their testing for the Test to Stay program in the morning. And yes, they're okay and good to go. As you all know, we've got, little kids in the program and things. So, we have a kid who forgets to go to the right and they go to the left of class. Teacher says, hey, did you kind of stop in? Oh, I don't have oh, it's okay, honey. And then they take them back and test them. So there is a communication loop that closes that.
Okay.
So just if we were just to summarize, the main difference now is that as long as folks are actually, regardless of vaccination status, there is no test to stay.
There's a test to stay. There's no test to return that the district put on top of that. There is a test to stay program that we do have in place still. And here you can see, for example, over here, if you're not fully vaccinated, quarantine, you can come to school if you're in the test to stay program. So there's that test to stay. And again, ours we kind of colloquially call test to return after being.
But our test to return, Ray, so if we have kids who were testing positive, were asymptomatic, we're out of the building, and then they return on the 5th day as they're able to do, or the 6th day rather, and then they test positive, or rather they return on the 6th day, are we not testing them any longer?
You're no longer testing them, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll go along with the testing encouraged here. So we will send out a communication this afternoon, update to the families, again, in preparation for a long weekend. And we'll share this exact document with the families and then giving them clarity that, again, we will not be doing any longer the testing to return. We would encourage that. And we are there to support it. We have the test that we are provided from the governor to go ahead and do that testing. And so we will continue that practice, but it's encouraged.
Okay.
Ray, do
Now-
we have a percent? Sorry. I just wanted to know if we knew the percent of our faculty, staff, students that were vaccinated.
Again, vaccinated or fully vaccinated, it would be the numbers that we have last, again, for faculty and staff on a 2-shot, it's approximately 93%. I don't know as far as boosters yet or anything like that. So.
And what about for the students?
Students are typically, with the information we have, is more out of the high school because, again, many students are bringing that for their different activities. And so we're seeing that around 75 to 80% is what we're seeing right now.
So we don't have any stats on all of our kids who are eligible for vaccinations.
So I do not have that directly, and with that or without that, I don't. From a pragmatic standpoint, I don't see that changing our practices or anything like that. It doesn't. It's not information that taking. What we are doing, and as Matt is actively doing, though, is trying to let everybody know in the county that we are definitely available and open for clinics and booster clinics and testing clinics and shots. We've done 4 of those, thanks to Matt. And we're definitely letting them know we're available. I think, Matt, they started doing that at County Center. Yep, so.
Thank you.
Okay, my question was about the testing, because I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of concern with that testing encouraged to return. That in cases where you were that you had COVID and you were positive, that you would continue to test positive. Now, I know I'd heard for sure that on a PCR test, you may test positive for a long time. My understanding is that on the rapid antigen tests, they're more indicative of if you're actually contagious, but do we have data on that or any kind of something that supports the fact that if you haven't had symptoms, you decide to go ahead and have your kid do the test when they come back, even though they don't have to, but just to be cautious, and then they test positive, obviously then they can't come to school. But do we know if they're actually contagious at that point? I guess, what do we have that supports, would help and encourage that? I mean, it seems like it's a good practice. It's a great opportunity for families to be able to access tests, which can be hard to get. But obviously there's that risk that you might continue to test positive on it. What do we have any data or info on the rapid tests?
And I think with us just starting, this is actually just be our second day back. We were testing kids. I don't have really too much on kids because it's just day 2. For our adults though, let's say if you have 100 adults going through this as they come out of the COVID piece, we're seeing about 80% of those adults on that day 6 are able to go ahead into the classroom. So now that leaves me with about, 20 or so faculty that are then going to come back on the next day. And on faculty on the next day, we're seeing anywhere 50 to 70% of those folks. So now that 20, that maybe gets me down to 7 to 10 people. Now we're going down. Then the next day, I get about half of those. So it's very, very rare that after day 7, 8, 9, and 10 with our faculty that we're doing, again, we only do that for a couple of weeks. But we're seeing that it is almost 100% by the end of the 10-day are coming back without any issues. That's for the adults. Like we only have that information because they've been doing it longer. So that's what we were seeing. And that's where the adults are very appreciative and say, look, Ray, hey, another day or 2 here to know that, again, our faculty, our employees, if they came in and they thought they transferred this to a colleague they work with, that's not a good, that's not where people want to be. So that is definitely something that nobody wants to do that. And they're like, oh, I came positive. I'll head home next day and clean. Oh, great. I'll come in and do that. So we are seeing, again, roughly 80%, and then it just walks down. So, for the over 2 weeks, we just maybe 1 or 2 people on that 10th day that we're still positive. And if you've used those tests, there's a brightness level. There's a really bright color and it kind of starts to fade away. So even those ones at the end are very subtle as a positivity piece. But our faculty, once again, are very appreciative of this because they're working with each other. They don't want to walk home and thinking I somehow got my colleague, sick because of what I did.
Okay, so while we're not able to mandate that going forward, we can encourage it, and it's something for families to consider if you really want to help ensure that that there's not a chance that your child is still contagious and might spread the virus to classmates or a teacher. Then you may want to take advantage of that opportunity to have them tested so that you can have that sort of reassurance that it's okay and be a little extra cautious. And then there also, if you've had COVID, was there a strict mask requirement for the additional 5 days? And if so, how does that translate to lunch?
So the mask requirement, again, was just basically as long as you could wear that mask, as we all are wearing a mask right now. The lunch piece is still, again, that separation, the 6 feet of separation. So that is still the key part that you need to maintain that social distancing in there. There's no added piece to that with the social distancing.
So all of our lunch environments right now have students at least 6 feet apart?
Right. So that's the part we're not, it's not a very conducive for socialization in our lunchrooms and things. If you go to Primrose, it really looks, my opinion, very awful. Kids are in rows, chairs, their own desks and apart and things like that. So that's the piece we're doing, again, with that 6 feet of isolation. Yeah.
So just to clarify, Ray, it looks bad from the perspective of someone who knows that education is not best done in little silos, but it's for the best interest of everyone's health right now that the kids are separated. It doesn't look bad in that in that they are separated. It's good that they're separated. I'm just trying to clarify, because when you say it looks bad, I want everyone to hear that it's actually for everyone's best interest of their health, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And those are the pieces that have helped us to mitigate transfer into schools. So that is a space we've done, as well as, making sure that we have this distancing as best we can in the classrooms, the mask wearing and things like that. So those are the pieces that have certainly assisted us. We're again seeing, smaller numbers of transfer. We won't have specific numbers of transfer again, because we're not contact tracing anymore. So we're not getting that flow back and forth. So that kind of will cease and desist as far as the ability to contact trace out, because we're not doing that anymore. Those numbers are going to precipitously drop. And to that point, I want to let you know that, from 2 weeks ago, where we were when we started school back, when we had a significant amount of our employees having to quarantine, to where we were to yesterday, out of our entire teaching rate, we had 2 new positive cases across the teachers yesterday. So we are definitely on the downward side of those positive cases. And we are seeing relatively the same kind of perspective for our students. So I think we had 15 new yesterday across the district for our students, compared to 3 or 4 full when we first came back. So we're seeing those both starting to drop off pretty quickly.
Ray, could I sort of clarify for my own mind? The whole guidelines here seem to suggest that if students have no COVID, no symptoms, no exposure, they are treated as normal and doing everything normal. And of course, we count on an honor system to tell exposure. And that's a key part. If they don't tell, we don't know, right? Is that fair to say?
Sure. Yes.
So I would urge our community and parents, so on, to remember, if you don't have COVID, you don't have symptoms, you don't, have exposure, there's nothing to worry about, but be honest about exposure. That's very key.
Right.
So last piece I had, again, more just to reiterate, we'll be working on a communication going out this afternoon with our new table here, and letting folks that we will be, again, removing the mandate for the test to return. And we will be highly encouraging that to allow folks to go ahead and come back to school, and the testing will be open again. Thank goodness for the work of our nurses to allow that to keep flowing. So.
Right, if we're not going to require as much testing, and I think we can talk about this maybe on Tuesday, what is that going to do to the workload and the caseload of the nurses that we have on staff? Curious to know what that's going to look like.
Well, if we're not doing as much testing, this should hopefully lighten what they've been working exceedingly beyond their normal days. So it may get us a little bit closer back to some sense of normalcy, but it's going to take some time to get there, because we're still going to have Texas State program. We're still going to have some of that, but the numbers will get a little bit less, but still setting up a room for testing and still doing those things. So. All right. Well, we'll get this out this afternoon so folks can know what to look for and plan for over the weekend. So
Good, very good.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, all right, have a good lunch.
Do we need to formally close the meeting, or we're good?
I think Heidi's got that.
Yes, be it resolved that the special meeting of the Board of Education be adjourned.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.